Hello, hello. Welcome back. Today I have two lovely guests who were both recently at the Toronto International Film Festival. I'm really excited to hear their thoughts on the experience, what they saw, recommendations for people like us that didn't get to go, and then, we can eventually see it when it hits theaters. And then we're going to play the game that we did last week, Own, Rent, or Trash, because that was such a hit. So, and everyone liked that. So I thought I'd bring it back, but this time different movies and with these two lovely gentlemen. I'm going to bring TJ from Cinematech to the stage and Tyler Wolf.
Hello.
How's everybody?
Welcome, welcome. I'm so glad to have you both here. Before we get into the whole TIFF thing, though, just because I haven't really talked to about this movie with anyone, did either of you see Speak No Evil?
Not yet.
Okay, cool. I want to see the original now that I saw the most recent one that just came out with James McAvoy. Because I enjoyed it, and I've kind of heard like where they differed, and the ending is apparently quite different in the original one. So.
Okay.
Yeah. But some of them, I think people were saying like some of the new one is kind of shot for shot the same. But if anyone in the comments has seen Speak No Evil, please let me know. James McAvoy was absolutely terrifying. So I found out it's the same director that did Eden Lake, and that's one of my I still to this day that movie gives me the creeps because the end is just awful, in a good way, I guess. So both of you guys were at TIFF. We can start with TJ and then Tyler. You guys can, but you can both chime in to each other since I wasn't there at all. So I'd love to hear what you guys experienced.
Yeah. I was there. I did the whole festival. I live in Toronto, so I'm able to just go every day after work and on weekends. Saw, I think, 27 films over the 11 days.
Wow.
Which is kind of a light year for me. I can be a bit of an idiot when TIFF comes around, but I was smart this year. I made sure that I got some sleep. Overall impression of the festival is that it was a little bit of a downturn from previous years in terms of quality of the films. Obviously, with a festival the size of TIFF, it's like 240 plus films in the festival. So even if you're seeing 20 or 30, you're only seeing about 10% of all of the films that are there. But yeah, just compared to the last couple of years, felt like there was a downturn in quality. Did see some really excellent films though. And happy to get into that a little bit more, but I'd love to hear what Tyler thought about the whole fest.
Yeah, so the amount I've seen doesn't pale in comparison, and weirdly enough, I'm pretty sure I got less sleep than you did, judging by the traveling, because that's usually the biggest pain in the ass. Like, I've been going to TIFF ever since 2018, and for the first 4 years, like the first 4 years that were physical, because 2020 we all streamed these movies at home, and which was still a decent enough experience getting to see stuff early without having to go anywhere. But for the first 4 years, I just stayed with my dad's best friend from high school because she lived in the city nearby, and there was literally a train station right next to her home. So travel wise, it always worked out up until last year where I had to start getting Airbnbs and getting like buses and trains to and back. It took up so much more of my time that I would love to have spent like making videos or at least writing notes about the videos, because that's a process in and of itself. But I do have to agree with Cinematech that the quality of movies has been going down. I don't know if it's just post-pandemic or if it was just this year in particular, but I'm starting to notice a decline in like the quality of the movies, the selection of films in particular, and just kind of the overall vibe, because it wasn't. I don't know if you feel the same way, TJ, but part of the fun of going to TIFF is that when you're waiting in line, you can talk amongst the other audience members about what they've seen, what they look forward to. When I was at Wild Robot, the girl and a friend of mine and I were the first ones in line, and we had a great talk with the volunteer in front of the theater about what we had saw and what else was out there. That was the one experience like that I really got to have the 2 weekends that I was there.
Yeah, I kind of noticed a similar thing, and I think it has to do with the way that that ticketing has changed at TIFF. Like, except for the pandemic year in 2020, where they had to have assigned seating because they needed to keep people apart. They have largely always been a festival where it's like first come first serve for seats. If you're first in line, you get the best seat. If you show up 5 minutes before the screening starts, good luck, you might be stuck with a really bad seat. Whereas this year, it was their first year since the pandemic year where everything's assigned seating. So like for me, lining up was just a thing that I didn't even bother with. I would wait until like 20 minutes before the screening would start, and then I would just walk right in. No one would stop me. No one would tell me to line up, and then I'm just in the theater sitting down. So like I think that experience of at least from my perspective, like I always get seat anxiety when it comes to going to see general admission movies. I wouldn't be showing up 45 minutes early, and I wouldn't have that opportunity to just like hang out with people in line. So that's kind of communal aspect was, I think, decreased a little bit this year.
Yeah, and I mean, it doesn't help that I feel so bad for the volunteers because whenever they get instructions on like when to like bring people in, how to organize the actual structure of anything, they are fucking clueless. And I feel so bad for them because a good chunk of them are just college kids who just want to have fun. There are perks of being a volunteer that you actually do get to see the movies alongside the crowd. And Tracy, you're going to appreciate this. Before every screening, there are these sets of commercials, and every year they do a volunteer appreciation commercial where it's mandatory too that we all like applaud the volunteers for their hard work because no matter how pissed off we are at them, they're trying. Their hearts are in the right place. My favorite is still from 2018 and 2019 where they sang "We Are the Champions" as a chorus. That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it's the best for me, at least, because like for a couple of years they had the For the Love of Film one, and people who are watching this who have never been to TIFF, like you're not going to know what I'm talking about, but there was this one where it's like this, it's kind of like the speech that you would expect to come at the end of a movie when like a general is trying to rouse his troops.
I was going to say, is it the one that kind of mimics the opening to Patton, or is that a different commercial?
Yeah, no, I think we're thinking of the same one. Because of like the way that it's set up. If you ever go to a Midnight Madness film, it's always a bit of a zany audience already, but they would always like there'd be people in the crowd who would stand up and salute during the during that particular video, and then start clapping for the volunteers after. Like that was fun.
I don't know, the Christie projection commercial, somebody actually shouted, "We love you, Christie," and I'm just sitting there going,
"Yep." That's man. Though I think the one, actually, no, talking just about how this is a bit of a down year for TIFF, the fact that we didn't have a Bulgari commercial where people could just clap along and watch Anne Hathaway and Zendaya just have the best day of their lives, like that I think put everyone in a bit of a bad mood.
I'm so glad you brought that commercial up because I remember seeing that like 2 years ago for the first time, and I've always felt like that they wouldn't be friends in real life. Like it didn't make sense to me. Like it felt like odd pairing.
It wasn't as... I don't know. I didn't think it was as bad as like Viola Davis, Helen Mirren, and Gal Gadot. I think it was like the same L'Oreal brand or something like that.
Or like,
and they're going,
Maybelline? Was it Maybelline?
Maybe it's Maybelline. I don't know.
Yeah.
That just came to me too. That's even better.
So really quick, and then we'll get back to what we're talking about. Just because you saw The Wild Robot, how was it?
Overall, it was pretty good. Like, here's the thing. We all know what story beats are going to come as they go along. And to be honest, it wastes no time getting to those. And one of my biggest problems was that the pacing is so rapid that it doesn't feel like scenes transition from the beginning to end. And it's like an hour 40, hour 50, if I had to guess. So like they cram quite a bit into the point where some side characters, they're there, but they disappear quite a bit. Like, I'm not kidding. Bill Nye, who plays a good guy for once, shows up halfway and says, "I'm this and that, and I want to help your Gosling." And I'm just sitting there thinking, the fuck are you? And aside from the last 20 minutes that are really preachy and have an environmental message that kind of came out of nowhere, my friend and I had such a good time smiling at this movie. It's one where it's the execution of the cliches that really makes it work because the animation is absolutely top notch. I didn't think I was going to love the 2D, 3D hybrid because I've already gotten kind of sick of those, but because it was hand painted and then They put CGI through it. It actually felt much more seamless.
It looks
And
beautiful.
it does. And it hit me on the train ride home that the robot Roz was so similar to the robot from Castle in the Sky, right down to the fact that during the third act, she's shrouded in like trees and just wakes up from hibernation. I'm just sitting there going, is DreamWorks trying to make a Studio Ghibli movie this entire time? And that's kind of what it was. And it worked so well because the actors brought so much personality towards these characters. Lupita Nyong'o did a good job as Roz. I like that for the first half of the movie in 2/3, it's kind of balancing the act between I talk like this because I am programmed to overriding and correcting her own programming so that she actually talks like a person for once. Pedro Pascal as the Fox was maybe my favorite character. He got the best laughs. He was good as a side comic relief. And I will say this, if I didn't know it was Pedro Pascal going in, I wouldn't have guessed because he puts on a different voice than he's used to. It's really hard to describe what makes it different. But and what really impressed me was that this has a darker sense of humor than I had anticipated because there are quite a few jokes about animals getting injured and on the verge of death. Like, one of the overarching themes is how nature is a dangerous place. And part of the reason this robot decides to adopt this gosling, other than Catherine O'Hara, who's really funny as this one possum, sees the gosling like attached to the robot and realizes, oh, guess I better lend her a hand. I already have 7 of my own babies. And then you hear a scream in the background and goes, I'll make that 6.
That's funny. Did you see it,
Oh,
DJ?
I didn't see it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I really liked the trailer, so that's definitely what I'm looking forward to seeing. Did you see? Were there any other animated films that premiered at TIFF this year?
I'm
I'm
glad.
not sure about a. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's okay. I was just going to say I'm not sure if it was a premiere, but Flow was at the festival. I didn't see it at the festival. I was lucky enough to see it before the fest. But I think it's going to be Latvia's entry for Best International Film at the Oscars, and it has an outside chance of getting nominated for Best Animated Film. But yeah, it's if you have a black cat and you love feeling anxiety, it's a great movie to watch.
That was no joke. Flow was like the main movie I wanted to see at the festival this year, and I had such a blast with this movie. I had seen this director's first movie, Away, during quarantine, and it really impressed me how he was able to make that good a movie just by himself. He animated it by himself. He did the music on his own. And yet the cinematography, the actual staging, it all felt super meticulous, even though the animation was up to par with like a PlayStation game. He took his resources and used it to his advantage. Where in this one, he has more of a budget. The animation looks a lot more crisp and it moves on a technical level up to like Disney or DreamWorks. Like, it really impressed me how fluid the characters moved in this, to the point where, and I didn't realize this until like 10 minutes in, so many scenes are actually told in long tracking shots. So like whenever a character is wandering from one place to another or being chased by other animals, like you really feel the scale and the tension that goes on within those scenes. It's impressive how cinematic it is. And especially because, for those who don't know, Flow takes place in this timeline where humanity is extinct. There's constant flooding around the world, and yet animals are basically the only living life forms on Earth at this point. And without getting into specifics, a black cat, a dog, a lemur, and this was a weird one, a capybara, who my audience laughed their asses off at all the time. They loved the hell out of that. They all find themselves on this boat, and they of course have to learn how to coexist and survive on their own as their boat goes from island to island. But it's kind of a post-apocalyptic Homeward Bound, where they don't talk, but you can look at their expressions and you know exactly what they're thinking. And the impressive thing is they all have arcs, especially the black cat, who the director was actually at my screening and gave an opening introduction where he said, I can relate the most to the cat. It was autobiographical in the sense that with my last movie, I worked on my own and it was great. But with this one, I had to learn how to be part of a team because he had animators to work with. Someone composed the music with him, and the music adds so much. It adds to so much of the drama and the tenderness between the characters to the point where the last 10 minutes, I actually did choke up at the finale, and I didn't think I was going to. There was already a climactic moment where, without spoilers, a character dies, and there's this spiritual symbolism that I wasn't expecting, but it was one of the most gorgeous scenes in the movie. And there were plenty of gorgeous scenes, like a Lord of the Rings size ultra wide shot where the cat is climbing on a statue and the camera's just sweeping by. And I'm like, this is mind blowing. Like, I don't know how much money he had in comparison to Away, but it was super well spent.
So both of you guys would kind of recommend that when it gets a theatrical release?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'd say check it out.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so we were talking about how it had more of a decline in the vibe this year for a multitude of reasons. Is it specifically the quality of the films or what they showcase? I'm not really sure if what the whole protocol is for choosing to showcase a film at TIFF instead of a different festival or things like that. What would you say is like the obviously it's a huge film festival and I'm not saying it's not, but like what do you think is the reasoning behind it? Is it to get people to distribute the films? Because that's a big thing as well. Like, what do you guys think about that?
So in terms of like the sort of modus operandi of TIFF, they have long been a festival that kind of lives and dies on the star power that they can bring in. It's the thing that they hype up the absolute most. And I think a lot of their programming decisions, especially when it comes to English language films, essentially come down to like, what stars are we going to get on the red carpet? Like, we don't really care if it's a good movie or not. Like, we just need to have Nicole Kidman on the red carpet. We need to have all of these other actors and actresses showing up, because that's like their primary way of promoting the festival, is just being like, hey, look who showed up. I think also just one other thing that needs to be mentioned about this year at TIFF is that the ticket prices went up. And I think when that happens, and just to give people at home sort of context for what those prices were, a premium screening was $90. And sometimes that premium screening wouldn't even guarantee you that the director or the cast would actually show up for it. And then normal tickets were like $30. You could maybe get a discount here or there at like 26 if you're a member and you buy in bundles and that kind of stuff. But we're talking about, ticket prices that range from double to 6 times the amount of money you're going to pay if you just go see it in your local movie theater. And so I think when you're doing that, your expectation as to how good the movie is going to go up. And it sort of naturally just makes it much more easier to be disappointed by what you're actually seeing. I will also say just one other thing about the quality, that the thing that I've been noticing more and more about TIFF is that they have good programmers and they have not very good programmers, the people who are selecting what films come in. And over the last couple of years, you start to get a sense for who's the good programmer and who's the not good programmer. They have many, many programmers that work at the festival. And so I think, going forward, if I'm trying to focus in on watching the highest quality of films possible, I'm going to start picking films based on who's programming them and not necessarily what I think is going to be like a good movie for me. And I think that's going to yield some good results. That's
very interesting.
Yeah, and I can definitely say, while I noticed the ticket prices went up, it didn't really affect me all that much, because usually I go for similar price screenings that I always have over the years, where it's either $26 at the least, $34 at most, or I look for a different screening as best as I can, because I know for a fact going in that, and if you go to the festival for a long enough time, you understand like there are certain days of the week where the celebrities and the crew members are guaranteed to be there, versus like the last half where you just go see it for the movie and nothing else. Like, you don't give a shit about the star power or anything like that. And I mean, I don't get super starstruck when I see people in the crowd. Like my very first year, I was at the premiere for Can You Ever Forgive Me? And I was like not even 6 feet away from Melissa McCarthy. My heart didn't skip a beat. I didn't go, oh my God. I just sat there and went, oh, how about that?
Yeah.
But I mean, you obviously want to hear what the actors have to say about the creative process, what drew it to them, and stuff like that. And I will agree with TJ that you can definitely tell who programs which movies based on the quality, amongst other things. But there is one thing that I have slowly realized again over the years that some people may disagree on whether that was a problem to begin with. There are certain themes and morals that TIFF really prioritizes when it comes to their movies. Like, here's a specific example. Before every screening of the movie, and I do mean before every single one, there is a land acknowledgement of some very beautiful First Nations land. It's the same speech that they've been giving for years on end that they used to just give as a speech, but for probably just to showcase the land, they started using an actual filmmaker and some documentary footage. And it is pretty to look at, but I'm just sitting there going, you guys really don't show that many First Nations movies to begin with. And when they do, it's like 2 or 3 that sell out really quickly. And I'm just sitting there going, what exactly are we accomplishing other than we're just stating it because we want to? And again, like there's nothing wrong with picking movies based on what opinions you have, but it comes to the point where several of them, I've complained about this, several friends of mine have complained about it. There are certain movies that just want to lecture you about how the filmmakers think the world should be. And 2020, there were 1 or 2 movies where it really hit me that hard. Like Shadow in the Cloud with Chloe Grace Moretz was more interested in being feminist than it was being like an action horror movie. And that got really grating after a while. And there were certain movies like The Life of Chuck was the first film that I saw this year. And overall, I would say it was decent. I don't think it was People's Choice Award worthy, but the first half hour of this, not only does it really have nothing to do with what we see about Chuck, in my opinion, but it's a completely different story about this apocalyptic world where like natural disasters are occurring left and right. And people at first like don't care. There's this scene that I didn't like, but everybody in my crowd dug, where they're at a parent-teacher meeting and one guy says, I can't access Pornhub because of this disaster. And the teacher's like, dude, we're here to talk about your son or daughter's attendance. And I'm just sitting there going, what the fuck does this have to do with The Life of Chuck? Like,
Is it the Tom Hiddleston one?
Yeah,
it is. And
Yeah.
do not let the poster fool you. He's really not in it that much. But I will say he does give one of his best performances ever when he actually is in it. And he definitely provided one of the most sweet and tender sequences in the entire film.
Well, that award also has gone to I believe quite a few Best Picture winners at the Oscars, and it was interesting. You're not the first person to say that. I think it was the Film Junk. I watched his short on it, and he was like, "It might just be me, but I like didn't love this movie as much as everyone else did." But I haven't even seen a trailer for it, so I know nothing about it. But I haven't seen people being like, "This is the best movie of the year," as you know.
I'm still trying to figure out if it has a release date, because I mean, Mike Flanagan worked on it, and so much of his stuff has gone on to Netflix. I'm kind of wondering if they're gonna put it on Netflix and in theaters at the same time. Like, if they want that Oscar buzz, they're probably gonna have to.
as far as I know, the film doesn't have a distributor yet. One of the reasons why that film would have gone to TIFF would be to pick up someone for someone to buy it. And once again, to my knowledge, that purchase hasn't happened yet.
Okay.
I imagine that the producers brought the film in with some sort of offer on the table from a Netflix, as you say. Flanagan has definitely done work with them before. But I think they probably thought that this could be the kind of film, whether or not we think it's a good film or not, it's the kind of film that a Toronto audience is going to really be into.
And they were.
And they were. Oh, yeah. The like I've said this, I think I said it in my review on Letterboxd, but like the film at the premiere got a standing ovation, and like TIFF audiences do not do standing ovations. We're not Venice, we're not Cannes. We don't give 10-minute ovations for no goddamn reason. Like if it gets a standing ovation, like the crowd really loved it.
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
I think they were kind of waiting to see if they could get a good deal if they did end up winning People's Choice, and they did. So now they're probably trying to milk some distributor for all the money they possibly can.
Yeah, and I mean, getting distribution is one of the reasons movies get submitted to TIFF. I mean, some of them already have them before they come to the festival. There are plenty of times where it's just to generate hype. Like I think Luca Guadagnino's movie Queer is going through the festivals, even though A24 has already got it, just to like hype it up. It's the Call Me by Your Name guy. He's making a similar movie with a similar premise. Let's just get the word out there.
Yeah, for sure. And like the other thing to remember about TIFF, like it's like Cannes, it's an international marketplace. So you're gonna have people coming in from, say, like, you know, TV channels and streaming services from, you know, like Sweden and Africa and Australia and all that kind of stuff. So, you know, while Queer, as you mentioned, has been picked up by A24, I think that may only be in North America for Canada and the United States. And so those producers could also be seeking to do deals with people from all over the world. And that's going to be the same for all of the other films. Maybe they have that main North American distributor, but they don't have partners for certain windows in different parts of the world. So that's also a big part of the festival on the industry side.
Yeah, if they ever have a set release date before they come to the festival, it's within like from September to November on a usual basis. Like there are some exceptions. Like I think Night Bitch, I didn't see it, but apparently it doesn't come out till Christmas. But they released it at the festival, which seemed really weird to me. It seemed awfully early. Because I mean, September to November, there's at least enough of a time window for people to like casually remember it.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the goals, like of the distributor going into it. Like if those rights have already been purchased. In the case of Night Bitch, they might be trying to keep it back into December so they can, with like say a limited theatrical run, just really make a push for the Oscars and get Amy Adams. It's Amy Adams, right?
Yeah.
Get her a push for Best Actress. I don't know if it'll actually end up happening, but that may be part of the strategy. But also to your point, like The Substance, which premiered at Cannes like back in May, hasn't been seen in North America until it premiered at TIFF. It's going to be in theaters in 3 days as a wide release. So sometimes, it's, you know, the next week, and sometimes it's a couple of months down the road. Sometimes it's a full year until some of these films get into an actual theater, if they get into a theater at all. It can really vary.
I'm glad you let me know that that's coming out in a couple of days, because that's one that is on my list for sure.
Fucking watch that movie immediately. Do not let anyone stop you from seeing The Substance. Punch babies in the face if you have to. I don't give a shit. Go watch The Substance.
As long as we're talking about the Beetlejuice baby, I'll take you up on that.
Sure. Whatever baby floats your boat. Just punch him. Just punch him.
This is kind of, I guess, like was part of my question, and like this is a much better way that it was phrased. Like, is there a hierarchy when it comes to these festivals?
I'll agree with Max's summation here. I think that pretty much sums it up. There's so many movies at Venice that half of them show up at TIFF immediately afterwards, which the fact that Florida did showed up at Venice but not TIFF really pissed me off, because the first Joker was a huge hit at TIFF, to the point where like they added on more screenings and you still couldn't get tickets because they sold out that quickly. And I kind of figured, well, with the hype that came from that, you figure TIFF would sign on to that. I don't know if TIFF didn't want it this year or the distributors just had other ideas, but that was baffling that it didn't even show up once. And one thing that did piss me off about like the major mainstream movies that were guaranteed to have an audience, so many of them only had like 2 screenings for the entire festival. Like We Live in Time only had 2. Megalopolis, especially, that bothered me, only had 2, which the track record of publicity Megalopolis had, you'd think they'd want more than 2 just to like get some more.
I can't wait to see that movie.
Yeah, same here.
So when it sorry to interrupt, but yeah, just in terms of like the amounts of screenings that films get, that's usually up to the distributor and not the festival. I'm sure
Ah,
TIFF would. I'm sure TIFF would have loved to do more screenings of the films that were going to get them a lot of ticket sales. Last year, as an example, Anatomy of a Fall was like one of the biggest films of the festival. It only had 2 screenings, and I'm a member of TIFF. I'm sort of like one level above the lowest tier. And when it came time for me to buy my tickets, Anatomy of a Fall was just fully sold out. Like couldn't get anywhere near it. It was the same thing this year with Anora. It was also the same thing with the new Kiyoshi Kurosawa film. Just some of these films, they could do so well if they just got like 3 or 4 screenings. But distributors, they have their own ideas about how their own release plans are going to work, and TIFF wants to be a good partner, so they just kind of back away.
really makes me question what better plans they could possibly have on that one. I mean, with Toronto, you can reach so many people who aren't even huge cinephiles. Like when I was at Flow, there were a shit ton of kids, and like I've never been to a screening that had like more than one kid, and I'm just sitting there thinking,
Oh man.
are they going to behave themselves? Like, are they actually going to pay attention? Other than like them laughing at the jokes and gasping at like the tension of seeing a cat like being hung through the air by a heron and then let go and just getting like that wicked tracking shot of it just like flying through the air. Like they totally ate it up. And it really impressed me that their parents went out of their way and paid extra money just to show their kids a more artistic, independent, animated movie. Like that actually was super optimistic of a crowd to be in.
I
Yeah.
love that. I'm assuming this is a film that was at TIFF. I have not heard of it though.
Maybe neither.
It's not one of the films that I saw.
Okay. Never mind.
Sorry, Carlos.
Sorry, Carlos. Thank you for chiming in though. So now that we've kind of talked about the logistics of the festival, what are some standouts that you saw? And what are some that you were kind of disappointed in, or just like kind of your overall list? I know we'll start with TJ. I know you saw a ton, but what are you thinking?
I did. All right. So I've already told you about The Substance. That was my second favorite film of the festival. Film number 1 for me was Anora, the new Sean Baker film, won the Palme
You
d'Or
saw
at
it?
Cannes. I did. I was able to get in. I can't remember who I needed to kill in order to get that ticket, but I got the job done.
I want to see it
Um,
so badly.
It's phenomenal. Like
Wow.
I was buzzing when I came out of the theater. It has the performances in it are top notch, excellent. The commitment to the aesthetic, to the chaos, like it's not the kind of film that you would expect Sean Baker to make. I think he's probably more well known for like his sort of like quiet character studies. This one is just kind of like a little over the top, a little madcap. There's a 26-minute home invasion scene that's just the hardest I've heard a TIFF audience laugh in so long, and it's incredible amounts of fun. Yeah, like it's if the stars align and everything goes the way it should, like Anora is a film that should be directly competing with Dune Part 2 at the Oscars. And I feel like Dune Part 2 takes the technicals, Anora takes a lot of other stuff, and could legitimately be like a Best Picture contender. Like it's that right combination of excellent film craft and like audience pleasing, kind of not like action, but just stuff happening.
Yeah.
And it's funny and it's cool and it's great. And then I'm not going to obviously go through all of the movies that I watched, but I will also just add in the film that surprised me the most. I do like to see films that I have no idea what they're going to be about. And the one that surprised me the most was a film called Kill the Jockey from Argentina. It's essentially what the title suggests. There is a jockey, a horse jockey, and people try to kill this person. But the way that the film is shot, it kind of reminded me of like a Jacques Tati film, sort of like later in his career. It did have that, once again, kind of like madcap, kind of silly thing going on, but the aesthetic was very exact and very precise. Like the entire film was extremely precise. Almost felt like a Wes Anderson film, but just like without the sort of big sort of pastel aesthetic flourishes, like stripping all of that back and being very cognizant of like camera position, the staging of the actors, what was going on in it, what was going on at all times. Like it just felt very, very precise. And once again, like fun, sometimes funny, sometimes a little depressing, but one that kind of came out of nowhere for me. And now I'm going to try to hunt down that director's other films. Luis Ortega, I think, is the name of the director. So gonna be doing that.
Very cool. How about you, Tyler?
Well, one actually name dropped on one of your live streams right after I had seen it was Crispin Glover did this A24 type of movie where it's hard to categorize it as either a psychological horror or a psychological drama. But it's a movie called Mr. K that stars, the only real star power in it is Crispin Glover, who for once plays the normal one in the movie. So really wrap your head around that part. I can't tell what time period it takes place in. I want to say it's like 50s, 60s, judging by like the set design and costumes. But Glover plays a stage magician who goes to a hotel overnight. And when he wakes up and tries to check out, all of the exits are gone. And in a Kafka-style fashion, most of the characters mistake him for somebody else and have him do all of these strange tasks. There's like a 20-minute segment where he's, I don't know, a newly hired prep cook who is just cracking eggs nonstop. And when, of course, every time he tries to go up to somebody and says, there's been a mistake, I'm just trying to check out of the hotel, I'm trying to get out of here, like the head chef will instantly say, you're ambitious, you need a new task. And it's that kind of thing where you can't tell if the hotel is playing a trick on him or if these other guests have been brainwashed by something sinister that's going on. Without getting into specifics, there's something underneath the walls that's definitely pulling some strings and reorganizing the hotel. And it's really about Glover's character trying to use his wits in order to map out the hotel and trying to figure out who he can trust that may still have a shred of sanity, or who is just out to get him or is completely lost. There's even a point where some characters mistake him as like this prophesized liberator who can get them out of the hotel, but it comes at the price of them leeching off his hotel and whatever supplies that he can find in order to escape. And it's just such a trippy movie that has so many clever ideas. For a low-budget movie, this entire hotel set is beautiful to look at. It is massive in scope. There are sequences that involve CGI that actually looks better than most Hollywood blockbuster movies, if you can really find that hard to believe these days. But it's got such an uncomfortable, tense atmosphere where there are sequences you're supposed to find scary, some where they're darkly comedic, but it can switch at the turn of a dime to the point where you don't really know when to laugh or be scared. That's basically where the A24 comparisons come in. And I'm probably going to say this in my video when it comes out, but it's easily the weirdest movie I've seen since Beau Was Afraid. And I mean that in a good way. And plus it's half as short. So,
and what is it
not
called
too much.
again?
Mr. K.
Did you see it, TJ?
No, I didn't.
No.
I didn't even know it was at the festival until he mentioned it. There's just too many films at TIFF.
Oh, I hear you on that. I mean, when I look for your Instagram story and it's just like TIFF number 27, I'm just sitting there going, how the fuck is that even possible?
It's not easy. Like basically I was seeing 3 to 4 films on weekends and then 2 films in the evening throughout the week. But yeah, it's not something that I recommend to people unless you can actually take that time off and not have to go to work during the day.
I was going to say, I know like American and Canadian kids who like go out of their way to see 2 or 3 things a day because they booked the week off. They actually have the flex time. They booked a hotel for whatever reason. I don't know how they can afford it since, well, you know how times are tough these days.
Yeah.
Do you guys ever Oh, sorry. No, you can go.
I was just gonna say, like, just to be kind of transparent, I also like work in the industry, so occasionally I would get thrown a free ticket to something at like 9 a.m. or something like that. So that's like one of the ways I was able to see as many as I could, or as many as I did, because like it was for work. I needed to go watch the movie to see if we wanted to do something with it. So yeah, that was also how I was able to see as many as I did while working.
Do you guys ever find that the placement of the types of films you're seeing can maybe lessen the experience? And I'll use this as an example. It's kind of like, when Barbenheimer was a thing, everyone was like, you're crazy if you see Barbie first and then Oppenheimer. Like, you want to get Oppenheimer done first and then watch Barbie afterwards. Does that sometimes happen when you're seeing so many movies in a row?
Yeah,
Sort
it can
of.
definitely be a thing. Like, if you're seeing a movie at 9 a.m., you're probably not used to watching movies at 9 a.m.,
Yeah.
like at any point in your life. So it's probably a good idea to have a shot of caffeine just before that to make sure you're fully awake. Um, I'll also say that when it comes to like Midnight Madness films, I become far less patient when it's midnight and I'm watching a movie. Like, if it's not good, it's worse for a film to be bad at midnight than it is for it to be bad at 5 in the afternoon. And yeah, in that way, definitely the time you watch the film can affect your opinion.
Yeah, and the time placements of certain movies can be a little jarring. Like the 9 a.m., the one that you just mentioned, that was basically my experience with Luca Guadagnino's Queer, because the movie is 2 hours, 10 minutes. It felt so much longer than that, especially in the second half of the movie, where it just kind of meanders more than the first part did. And it didn't, in my opinion, anyways, provide as much character depth as it needed to in order to really latch on to this romance. Because for the first half of the movie, I thought it was good but not great. What everyone's been saying about Daniel Craig is true. This is one of his best performances. He proves that he can be a much more sophisticated yet vulnerable and in some ways deplorable character, because it's based off of William Burroughs' book, and he kind of has that half pretentious, sophisticated, half junky kind of personality that you get in those kind of books. But he really pulls it off. And the guy playing his boyfriend, I had never heard of this kid before. I think his name is Drew Starkey or something like that. But he had great chemistry. And like the instant moment you see him in the movie and Craig like stares at him, you can instantly feel a connection. And during the lovemaking scenes, which I don't think are as many as they make it out to be, but they're just as full frontal as people make them out to be. You really got to admire the dedication that these guys went to in order to choreograph them and make them feel real. And I will say this, regardless of your sexuality, you can buy the tension between the two of them and the intimacy, because the actors are fully committed and the music goes back and forth from being romanticized to being suspenseful because of just the unpredictable nature these two have. But at the same time, I don't really know that much about these characters. I don't really know enough to feel sorry for them, especially when halfway through they start showing Craig being a heroin addict. There's like a 10-minute unbroken shot where the first 5 minutes is him just like loading up the spoon and the needle, and then the other 5 of him just sitting there smoking a cigarette. And I'm just sitting there thinking, Luca, we get it. We get that he's alone. It doesn't take this long in order to spell it out. All these 5 minutes like could be spent explaining why he's in Mexico, what relationships have led him down this path. And with Starkey's character, you know even less about him other than he's a discharged Navyman, even though he doesn't really look the part. And they, of course, do the thing where because it's the 40s and 50s, he doesn't like to show off who he truly is in public and is in denial about himself, even though it really comes out of nowhere when he starts ignoring Craig. And I'm just sitting there going, did they delete a few scenes? And then it turns out that's exactly what happened. The original cut for this was supposed to be like 180 or 200 minutes, something like that. And
Yeah.
apparently it's supposed to provide a lot of context. And as much as I wanted to doze off in the second half, where they take a road trip to the Amazons to find ayahuasca and trip on it. It's which isn't anywhere near as exciting as it should be, which is really disappointing because you got Leslie Manville being this gun-toting crazy shaman slash medical doctor who is like, it doesn't trip the same way you guys want it to, and it's gonna give you some shit you don't want to find out. But as slow as everything was, I'm kind of wondering if the original director's cut would have had like a Kingdom of Heaven effect where everything would have more explanation and there would be more depth that would give us a reason to sit through the slower moments.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I have heard that the tone shifts dramatically, and I did hear that the original cut was like 3 hours plus long. Did you see it, TJ?
I didn't see it, unfortunately. I think when Tyler was seeing that at 9 a.m, I was seeing The Girl with the Needle at 9 a.m, which is its own special kind of hell to watch at 9 a.m. in the morning. But since and I'll talk about that film in a bit if you'll allow me. But just for Queer, I think since it did get picked up by A24, I think they're likely going to do probably a release similar to Midsommar, where we get, you know, that first release that's however long it is, 2 hours to whatever, and then they have the release where they add on the extra half hour or whatever. Yeah, that wouldn't shock me.
Which I don't follow because, like, as soon as Ari Aster gave them like 2 hits in a row, they let him do his 3-hour epic. And I wouldn't say the movie failed because it was that long. I would say it failed because for their most expensive movie, they did a shit job at advertising it. But at the same time,
Beau is Afraid?
Wait, what?
Yeah. Beau is Afraid?
Oh, no, I was just gonna steer back to the fact that this is the guy who made Call Me By Your Name and already had challengers. Yeah. Like he had Call Me By Your Name. He had challengers out this weekend. I feel like that would have given the studio incentive to like give him more creative control since he's already proven himself. But I also realized that like Suspiria wasn't a big hit. Bones and All wasn't a big hit. And I mean, I like Bones and All. I didn't love it. Suspiria, I gave up after a half hour because his editing style in that, I don't know what the fuck he was thinking. And that's just the other problem with Queer. As much as Guadagnino is like experimenting and evolving with his style, there are so many sequences where it feels like he's just showing off because it feels like it, because it's based off of William Burroughs' book. And if you know anything about Burroughs, there's a certain real life incident that really shaped his life. And they recreate that in the movie as a dream sequence. And I'm just sitting there going, really? You had to do the William Tell thing for no reason other than it looks weird?
That's weird that the pace, because you're not the first person to talk about the pacing in the second act, because I think the one positives of Challengers was I know that's not a long movie in comparison, but to me that movie kind of flew by in a lot of it's like some directors, I feel like the pacing can be typical to their other films. But when it feels off, it definitely comes down to, I think, final decisions made in the editing process for sure. What was the movie you were talking about, TJ, that you watched at 9 a.m.?
Oh, The Girl with the Needle. So very fun, uplifting film about, weirdly, this is going to be the third time I talk about this in this whole live stream, but killing babies. It is a post-World War I film that takes place in Denmark, I believe. And it follows a woman who gets pregnant, doesn't want to get pregnant, wants to get rid of the pregnancy. She then becomes the girl with the needle for reasons I'm sure you can figure out. And this whole thing kind of spirals out to the point where she ends up helping out who she thinks is a benevolent child trafficker, but actually turns out to be someone who has a less than kind opinion on babies and whether or not they should exist. And yeah, it's a black and white film. It's a dark film. It's a depressing film. It has the best score of the year. It kind of sounds like what if Trent Reznor had started making film scores back in like 1993 instead of in the 2000s. It's probably the best looking film at the festival. The black and white cinematography is it's detail. It has that detail and depth to it that I really like. And I think we were talking about Life of Chuck earlier. One of the reasons I wasn't a big fan of that is that, it felt very stagey. It felt like it was all built on a set, and they didn't spend a lot of effort making the different sets, especially the town that the middle section takes place in. They didn't really spend a lot of effort making it feel like a detailed place. It kind of just felt sort of slapped together a little bit to me. And so with The Girl in the Needle, seeing the amount of detail in every image was very, very nice. It also has a kind of odd relationship with like silent film in the way that it approaches some of its nightmarish imagery. Like some of the effects that they use feel like they could have been pulled out of like a 1920s horror film. And I really just loved the execution of that aesthetic. And yeah, like very good overall film. I wouldn't be surprised to see it get to at least make it somewhat far into the best international Oscar race, maybe long list. I don't know with the subject matter if it gets to the final five. It's a difficult film to watch.
I don't know. I feel like
great.
the Oscars have been generally okay with subject matter like that, but it's funny you mentioned Trent Reznor because him and Ross actually did the score for Queer, oddly enough.
Well, they've been working with Luca for a while.
I was gonna say, and I mean, the score for Queer was good, but it was also one of those movies where there's always music in the background, no matter what the context is or what tone it is. It was that kind of thing where there's either a soundtrack playing or there's diegetic music in the background. And I'm just sitting there going like, just take a deep breath. Like the best sequences had like no sound and it was just the characters looking at each other and thinking. And I almost, before I forget, one of the highlights of Queer was Jason Schwartzman giving a really good best supporting performance.
I didn't even know he was in it.
Well, you wouldn't because he looks more like Bobby Moynihan than he does like himself.
Wow.
I mean that in the nicest possible way, and he has a similar snarky sense of humor to go along with it too.
Wow. Yeah, that's cool. I would say final like one recommendation before we move on to our little game. If like so out of everything you saw, the one movie you would recommend people check out the most?
I think for me, it's Anora. I wish I could give you a curveball, but
no, that's fine.
It's the best, if not the second best film of the year. It's like Dune Part 2 in that, and I don't know if anything really comes close to it. Maybe I can give you like just one other curveball. The Shadow Strays. It's by the director who did the Netflix action film The Night Comes for Us. I believe that's the name of it.
Okay.
It's an Indonesian action film. It tries to do that like John Wick 2 or John Wick 3 thing where they're like building out this larger world for this group of assassins called the Shadows to live in, which I think is my biggest issue with the film. It should have just been more John Wick 1 and just hinted a couple of things, but overall you're just telling the story of these cool assassins killing people. But like the last 30 minutes of the action that happens, the fight sequences, like it is hard, it is bloody. You see screwdrivers used in ways that they're not meant to be used in. And it'll leave you thrilled, absolutely, and probably wanting the Shadow Strays Part 2 to be released as quickly as possible. But yeah, that was just a really solid action kung fu movie. Recommend that for sure.
That's awesome to hear because Indonesian action movies are pretty underrated. Like I describe them more as R-rated Jackie Chan flicks to the point where they're just as acrobatic. They use multiple improvised weapons that you would not expect. And
screwdriver.
I mean, didn't Night Comes for Us have like a meat hook or something like that? Like,
you know, probably because there was a meat hook in the Shadow Strays. So maybe that's just a maybe that's a calling card for the director.
Yeah, it has to be that specific director. But as much as overly relentless as I thought Night Comes for Us is, that's still a glowing recommendation for sure.
Mm-hmm.
My favorite, I think I've already made that part clear just on how long I've ranted and raved about Flow.
Yeah.
And I pretty much mentioned all the movies that I had a good time with. I'm still figuring out whether or not I liked Jason Reitman's Saturday Night because it had a lot going for it, and I also think that there were a lot of missed opportunities.
I can't wait to see that movie. I am such an SNL fan, and I'm really looking forward to this one.
One thing I'll warn people about, if you want to see the actors do dress rehearsals in character as their sketches, you're probably going to be disappointed because it has more of an Aaron Sorkin behind the scenes approach where it's the cast and crew arguing with each other. And it's not that
I'd
we
love
don't get-
that. Yeah.
it wasn't bad, but I wanted more than that. But I will say this. All the actors fit their parts, especially Corey Michael Smith as Chevy Chase. It is uncanny how much he
Wow.
looks just like him. And one of my favorite bits is when Milton Berle is visiting the set and Chase and him have quite a few exchanges of insults that had me on the floor. I couldn't believe how dark it got.
Wow. Well, that's I'm definitely. I think that comes out in a couple weeks. I think so.
Couple weeks for New York, LA, and Toronto, so you might be able to catch it.
Yes, I will definitely be checking that one out for sure. Mindless Meat says, I am at work and trying to get these down in between actually working. So I hope these recommendations are working out for you. Mindless Meat, thank you so much for joining. And before we start, are you guys excited? Because I'm more terrified, but I want to see it.
I feel like the story I'm probably going to have issues with, but when I walked into the theater for It's Such a Beautiful Day and like the trailer was halfway through, like 3 girls morphed into one, there was all that Roman design and chariot races. I'm just sitting there going, okay, there are sequences in this that I'm going to love on a pure aesthetic level.
Yeah.
I doubt that's going to be enough, but I want to give Coppola the benefit of a doubt.
I'm not that excited personally. I am so worried about this movie. I agree it's probably going to have some great looking sections in it, but like, what was the last good Coppola film? Like, and was it released in the last 3 decades? I don't know if I can give this guy the benefit of the doubt anymore.
And to be honest, like there are several of his I find overrated. Like I've never liked Apocalypse Now. To me, that's just the same conversation for 2.5 hours over and over again. And I'm just sitting there going, who the fuck finds this poetic?
Maybe it depends on the cut.
Yeah, but I
love that movie.
I've seen both. Favorites. I've seen both cuts though, and neither one really impressed me. It's nice to look at. Like Coppola has always had a visual flair to it, and I'm always going to appreciate him for the Godfather movies. And as dumb as it is for him to say, like, you have all these Star Wars and Marvel movies, like watch something original. And I'm just sitting there going, yeah, really enticing. You're doing a great job there. He is right. Like, I do want to see more movies with a new Hollywood style in a similar vein to his, because those have influenced some of the greatest films and filmmakers ever. And I just, maybe I'm probably, it's probably a fool's dream of mine for this to be good, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah, I may end up seeing it. Like, I'm kind of curious to see, and I don't know, I don't think this counts as a spoiler, but there is supposed to be a moment in the film where like an audience member is supposed to stand up and answer something that happens on screen. I think it's like a press conference or something like that, where Adam Driver is like, you ask me a question, and then someone from the audience is supposed to stand up and say the line. And so like at the screening at Cannes and the screening at TIFF, they had someone there to do that. So I'm kind of curious to see, like, are they going to have that for just normal screenings? Is Cineplex in Canada going to hire a guy just to sit in Megalopolis for like 10 hours a day to do this one line? Like, how is that going to work?
Oh my God.
There's no way.
I'm curious about that.
There's no way in hell the people at Landmark are going to do that.
Well, yeah. So I wonder if it's going to turn into this thing where like if you go watch The Room with your friends on like Friday night or Saturday night, and everyone knows like to do like the Meanwhile in San Francisco bit or the Spoon bit or like all of the other stuff.
Yeah.
Is there just going to be like someone who's like, all right, I'm going to do this now, or and like 5 people are that person, and so it's 5 people yelling out the line at once, and it just turns into this fan interaction thing that happens at every screening? Or are there going to be screenings where no one knows what the fuck is going on because no one's saying anything and they don't know why? It's weird, but I'm kind of curious for that.
Volunteer in our respective theaters when we see it, if they don't have someone in that role. So the first, I think we all know how this goes. You get to choose if you, out of the three that I'm going to show you, if you would own it, rent it, or trash it. And we are going to go with the first one: Hitchcock movies, Psycho, The Birds, and Vertigo.
Why would you do this to me, Tracy?
Yeah.
Why would you do this to
Why
me?
is this the first question?
I own all three of these.
I
I'm
own two.
sure.
I own two of these, so one of
Yeah.
these answers is going to be easy.
Tyler, do you want to go first?
Well, only because I haven't actually seen it. I'm gonna trash The Birds, although it's on my list. Fuck, I'm gonna say rent Vertigo and own Psycho just because this shower scene still gets to me. I'm not gonna lie.
Okay. I think I'm gonna have to own The Birds because it's my favorite of these three films. I do recommend it if you haven't watched it. I hate myself. I'm probably going to rent Psycho and trash Vertigo, but like I fucking hate myself because Vertigo is so goddamn pretty. And
Yeah.
it's the kind of film you could just like put on, like if you get like 100-inch like LED thing, put it on the side of a wall and just have it play. Like you could just have it play silently in a museum or in a gallery and like no one would question it. It looks so goddamn good. And like there's so much going for it in terms of like the relationships between like Jimmy Stewart and I forget the name of the actress. Was it Kim Novak?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, the back and forth between those two, the way the switch happens, like all of the psychological aspects of it. But I think I would rather just like sit down and have a beer and watch Psycho as opposed to like worship at the altar of Vertigo, you know? So I think
Yeah.
that's why I would say rent Psycho, trash Vertigo. But I already own all three of them, so
I think
I
I need
love.
to. I was just gonna say, I think I need to rewatch The Birds again. I saw it in college, and my biggest, I think my entire mood shifted when they killed off Suzanne Pleshette's character because I thought she was like such an interesting character, and I would have had it reversed where the blonde one got killed first. But that's just me. But I think I need to give it another shot for sure.
yeah, for me, like if I were to ever make a movie, I think The Birds would be the movie that I steal from the most. There's just a lot of like cool little tricks and things that Hitchcock does in that film that I love to death. And so yeah, it's the one that I keep going back to and rewatching for that reason.
I love and feel bad for Mindless Meat so much just based on what he said in the chat.
I have been attacked by birds in real life. Stop trashing.
Hey man, a seagull has pooped on me, and if I can put that behind me, then maybe you can put that behind you. In fact, actually, a seagull has also hit me in the face with its wing. Like I have also been accosted by birds, and I somehow get enjoyment out of this film.
I have come close because Canadian geese are assholes.
Very true.
So
true.
these are the number one ranked Pixar films on IMDb. I did not do sequels because I believe Toy Story 2 is actually above the first one. I don't know, something like that. I just chose non-sequels. So now you'd have to own, rent, or trash these.
I'm gonna trash Finding Nemo. That's actually pretty easy from that perspective. And then between Toy Story and Inside Out, which one do I want to watch more often? Probably Toy Story. I probably want to watch that more often. Inside Out is like, oh, I need to babysit my friend's kids, so we'll show them Inside Out or something like that. Like it's not something I would need to have with me at all times. So yeah, I'd own Toy Story, trash Finding Nemo, and rent Inside Out.
Hot take, I'm gonna trash Inside Out because I actually do. Tracy already knows this. I like the second one a lot more than the first one, and it was kind of what I was expecting from the first one to begin with. And I rewatched Toy Story last year, and I still really liked it, but I don't know what it is. It lost a little bit of magic, so I'm gonna say rent Toy Story and own Finding Nemo. I still remember vividly seeing Finding Nemo back when it first came out, and that was quite an experience.
Yeah, I mean these are all so highly ranked, so it's no one's necessarily wrong.
And for
No
good,
one's
and
wrong
for
in
good
any,
reason.
you know. So
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. Yeah, that's a I don't know. That's a tough one. I feel like I might go with TJ on this just for my personal like opinion, but I have not rewatched Finding Nemo in a long time. I think I only saw it in theaters. So if I on a second watch, I might, and I loved it when I saw it, but yeah, I think so. I would probably own Toy Story. Yeah, see, owning Toy Story Inside Out are tough for me, but Inside Out I feel like is maybe a heavier movie. I mean, Toy Story definitely pulls on the heartstrings a lot too, but yes, these are tough. Okay, so these are the top 3 ranked Tom Hanks
Ah,
movies.
All of
fuck.
my children all
Ah,
together.
no kidding.
Well, you get to go first this time, Tyler. So
Oh, don't remind me. Again, mostly because I've never seen it all the way through. I'm gonna trash Philadelphia, even though I've seen parts enough of it to know that it is good. But these two really is between deciding your own children. I'm gonna regret saying this, but I'm gonna say Rent, Private Ryan, and Own Forrest Gump, just because I think because Forrest Gump is a lighter movie and there's more reason to be sentimental towards it. And it's a movie that my mom and I have watched together on our own so many times and have cried together as we like ordered out. It was hell, there was actually a Christmas Eve at my dad's side where it was actually on halfway through, right during the Vietnam sequence. And for whatever reason, my grandparents, aunts, and uncles, we all just stuck with it because we knew it was that good. And Saving Private Ryan is probably a better movie, but because of how bleak it is, it's not as rewatchable. So I'm going to say Rent, Private Ryan, and Own Forrest Gump.
okay, this is gonna be weird. I'm gonna trash Forrest Gump. I had that movie on VHS when I was a kid, and I think I've seen it enough. So I don't need to keep it around.
I'll give you that.
Yeah. The other two actually I haven't seen that much of. Saving Private Ryan was in that weird place. I think it came out in like 2000 or 2001, where like I wasn't really buying as much physical media anymore, and I never really had it at home to watch it over again. So I think I've only seen it like once, and maybe that was on like TV, not even in theaters. And then Philadelphia was a more recent discovery because I think it's one of the movies that Jonathan Demme made after Silence of the Lambs.
Yes.
So between the two, if we're thinking about this like practically, I'm probably owning Saving Private Ryan, because if I ever one day have the epic home theater system of my dreams, that's probably going to be a movie that I would put on to show off like how good the sound system is.
That beach in Normandy would do the trick.
Yeah, exactly. And then Philadelphia would be a rental, just because I think because Jonathan Demme, he like often worked with the same cinematographer. It's kind of interesting to watch Silence of the Lambs and then watch Philadelphia, because they do a lot of the same things with like, you know, the actors looking straight into the camera and things like that. But obviously it's coded differently when it's, you know, Hannibal Lecter versus Tom Hanks doing that, depending on, you know, the role that they're in and what they're doing in the scene. So I think Philadelphia like is good to watch occasionally, but I think Saving Private Ryan would be the one that I'd pull out to impress people, or if I just want to be depressed.
You know? Oh, that's valid. And it's funny you mentioned the cinematographer Tak Fujimoto has not only worked for Demme, but has done like Shyamalan, John Hughes. Really? Wow.
Yeah, he's done a lot, but I think yeah.
And even That Thing You Do with Tom Hanks, that's an interesting choice.
Yeah, but I think he's done like 5 or 6 films with Demme. Like I think there's a string of films like all in a row, like Married to the Mob, Philadelphia, obviously Silence of the Lambs. Like there's like a run of like Wild. 5 or 6. Yeah. And they were just working together for like years together. And you can actually like watch the evolution of the visual style of Demi's work, because like that cinematographer was just getting kind of like better and better and more comfortable, and I think it kind of like peaked at Silence of the Lambs, but then you can also see it in the films that came after as well.
And I'm just realizing the sequences I have seen of Philadelphia, like when he's in the library or when he meets Denzel for the first time, they have those exact techniques that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think Philadelphia has like it's. I was so blown away when I watched it, and I it's a hard movie though to be like I'm gonna throw this on a lot. You know what I mean? It's the rewatchability factor is tough there.
All three of these films are kind of bleak in their own way.
Yes. Oh my God.
True. Yeah.
I'm gonna go to the next slide. We have all of Jordan Peele's filmography as of late. Get Out, Us, and Nope.
So I guess I get to go first now. All right. This is once again going to be weird because I own Nope, but it's going to be the one that I trash because I've watched it once after buying it. I'm probably going to watch it one more time, and then maybe once again when I get that Super 6 sound system, I'll throw it on a third time. But after that, like it's getting sold. I don't think there's really a need for me to watch it or keep it around forever and ever. And then I think then I would just own Get Out and rent Us, basically just in order of how much I enjoy those two films. I think Get Out is a wonderful movie, one that I probably would watch a couple of times more. And then Us would just be kind of like, yeah, that occasional movie. I really like Lupita Nyong'o. It'd be nice to have her come hang out. And yeah. This wasn't as much of a kill your darlings type selection, but still tough.
Yes.
No, this is going to be easy for me. I would own Get Out, rent Us, and trash Nope. I didn't even like Nope when it came out, so it didn't really do anything for me. And Us, I went with a bunch of co-workers to see, and we all had a good time. We had a Facebook group where we kind of theorized the hidden meanings and symbolism, and then when I bought it and rewatched it at home, because I had already deciphered all that stuff, it somehow lost some suspense. But it was worth a second watch, but I don't know if I would ever see it again. And Get Out was just such a huge surprise at how good a filmmaker Jordan Peele was. Like, I don't want to say he's super stylish or anything, but he is meticulous enough in his approach. And when you hear him talk about other horror movies, he clearly is a fan and knows what he's talking about. But I'll be honest, I don't think he's really captured that spark that Get Out had since his other stuff.
No, that's fair. And I think I need to rewatch Nope. I didn't dislike it. I think it's definitely like the quieter film, and I think there's a lot more of it criticizing Hollywood. And that's, and it is also, there's so many homages to Spielberg in that one. But and
Akira.
Yeah. And
yep.
I don't necessarily gravitate towards like, I'm going to throw that one on. Like I would the others. So I kind of agree with you guys on that. We've got another one. This is going to be David Fincher films. And I think we just have one more after this.
Okay. Again, this is going to be a hot take, but I find some of the characters in Social Network a little too unlikable. I know that's what they were like in real life and shit, but the story of Facebook just never grabbed me all that much. So I'm going to say trash Social Network. Sorry, but I love David Fincher detective movies the most. So I would say rent Zodiac and own Seven, because not only was Seven like the first true Fincher movie, it's one of his most suspenseful because of how bleak it is, the incredible performances. I mean, it's still like top 5 for Brad Pitt, Morgan Freeman, and for Kevin Spacey, as bizarre as some of that sounds these days. But even with everything, even with how dark and grim it is, it's somehow still rewatchable just because the mystery itself and the procedural and the team dynamic between Pitt and Freeman is just that good.
Yeah, I'm not really going to be able to disagree with that. I think once again, going back to Forrest Gump, I think I've just seen The Social Network too many times recently, and I think I've become kind of like a Social Network reactionary, where like so many people have told me it's like one of the best American films of all time. I'm like, no, it's not.
I agree.
Um,
I agree.
yeah, and then when it comes to the other two, um, I think Seven is always going to have a very special place in my heart. Going back to what I was mentioning about the girl with the needle and how the aesthetic is very detailed. Uh, it's the same thing with Seven. It's a grimy city. It's a disgusting city. So much of that film is built into the production design where no one really needs to tell you, aside from Gwyneth Paltrow when she says, I hate this city, no one needs to tell you that it's a bad place to live. You just know it's a bad place to live. You know, from, even if you've never experienced film noir before, you kind of understand that this is bad things happening to people in a bad place. And there's just so much you can dissect from it, so much you can get from it, even if you're just learning about how to make films, the way that Fincher moves the camera around, the way that he captures moving from space to space or within spaces. Like it's really, really solid stuff. And considering it's like one of his very first films, it's pretty remarkable. I think also it just has that nostalgia thing for me. Like I think it's what, a 1995, 96, 97-ish kind of film.
Yeah.
I would have been about 12 or 13 when it came out. And so it would have been like that cool, edgy film that the cool kids talk about because their parents don't care if they watch rated R movies.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's a film I've seen a lot, but it's a film that I have a lot of history with, and a film that I would definitely revisit. I think there's a new 4K version of it coming out like end of this year or like early next year or something. So I'll probably be buying that because that's going to be my own. And then for Zodiac, yeah, I think that's still a very, very solid film. One that I would watch, every couple of years on a rental basis. Yeah, it's very, very good. But to me, not as good as Seven, not as personal to me as Seven is.
And ironically, my favorite Fincher movie is actually his Dragon Tattoo remake, considering I had already read the book, I had already seen the Swedish version, but this one still made me feel the most tense. And I remember when my parents saw it on their own, even though it fucked them up that much, it was still worth it. Like Fincher knows how to make the darkest shit seem entertaining and rewatchable. I don't know how sick of fuck you have to be in order to do that. Part of the reason The Killer has gotten better when I rewatched it is that it is lighter and more mundane in comparison to his other stuff. Like it was a fresh enough change of pace while still having like the stuff that we expect from him.
I would say I agree with you guys on everything you said for there. We do have the final one. So this is going to be Paul Thomas Anderson, Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and There Will Be Blood.
So luckily I saw Boogie Nights like a month ago.
Oh.
Otherwise I would not have been able to participate in this. Trash Magnolia, who gives a shit? It's a really good movie, but I don't have any love for it in my heart. I think I would probably take Boogie Nights over There Will Be Blood. Own Boogie Nights and rent There Will Be Blood. If I hadn't seen Boogie Nights, I would have said There Will Be Blood own, but Boogie Nights was just so. I saw it on 70 millimeter. I saw it on film, so I was able to get the warmth out of it, get the detail out of it, out of the image, I should say. And like Mark Wahlberg, like why the hell is he not that good in every movie? I wish he could be like that in everything. But yeah, like I'm bad at this. I've been talking for too long, but Boogie Nights, great. 100%. And There Will Be Blood, also very good. One of Daniel Day-Lewis's best performances. Great score. Dirty, disgusting oil movie. Yeah. Once again, my words are escaping me, but rent There Will Be Blood. Boogie Nights would own that. Yeah.
I pretty much have the exact same thought, but I will say I've only seen bits and pieces of Magnolia, and while it wasn't bad or anything, it wasn't the most investing I had seen. There Will Be Blood we all remember it for Daniel Day-Lewis and for certain scenes, Paul Dano. I don't think it's as memorable as some people make it out to be, though it is still really good. But I mean, Boogie Nights is just, it's one of the rare movies of his that just about any adult could enjoy. And I say any adult specifically because,
Yeah,
well, we all know why.
it's a big dick.
But you didn't have to spell it out. But
yeah, it's There Will Be Blood is such an epic film, and I don't know how much of a it's not an easy one to throw on as frequently as Boogie Nights for sure. And Magnolia, I think the performances and those specific storylines are really what. I mean, it's almost like this constant rhythm within Magnolia that kind of pieces all these sequences of these people's lives together in a really brilliant way that I love. But I would say definitely to own, if I had to watch it a bunch of times, out of all of them, it would have to be Boogie Nights for sure, just because of the rewatchability factor.
Mm-hmm.
And there's just so much stuff that is in the background you can discover on rewatches. There's a YouTuber I edit for, Dark Hour, and Boogie Nights is one of his all-time favorite movies. He's already covered it on his Uninspired Hour podcast with the Uninspired Reviewer, to the point where I highly recommend you check it out. They even got a professional adult star to join their panel and talk about the movie, and got some interesting insights. But he talks about how every time he watches the movie, there's always something that he never noticed before, and he can gush about so many of the other actors. I think Thomas Jane as the one, he wasn't a drug dealer, but like he's the one that gets them mixed up with Alfred Molina in the climax, which is still one of the best sequences. I can still quote Molina just going, "It's Cosmo. He's Chinese."
We have Tim Morrill saying Fincher seems like Hitchcock normal guys making very messed up stuff.
I wouldn't call Hitchcock a normal guy.
That's true.
Honestly, that guy was kind of a dick, if we're being honest.
Own 7. I love that movie. It's so good. Zodiac is really good. I agree. This game is like a sacred cow barbecue, hard to roast superior films. Absolutely. And then sometimes I'll throw in like all three movies are pretty bad, and that's always fun as well. But
that
was one thing I was worried about going in, and a part of me wonders if that would have been a little more fun than choosing between your own children.
Yeah. Choosing between the family of the shitty family down the street that like doesn't mow their lawn that often, like that would have been a lot better.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining me today. Are there any last thoughts you had on TIFF or anything you want to promote as we wrap things up?
I am on my channel right now. I think I've probably said enough about TIFF, but on my channel right now, we're doing something called the Cinematheque Top 100, where the community gets to vote on what they think the best 100 films of all time are. I believe Tracy has been nice enough to link it in the description box below if you want to fill out a ballot. It's just 10, your 10 favorite or what you think the best films of all time are. And then I'm going to tally it all together and put together a list of the best 100 films ever. Did this last year in 2023. It turned out really well. We've already had more submissions than last year, so I'm hoping it's going to be a list that at least has less ties in it. It turns out that when you let a whole bunch of people pick what their favorite films are, they don't often agree with one another. So I'm hoping there's going to be a bit more of consensus and less ties. But yeah, it's a fun thing. And I think I'm going to be live streaming next week or maybe the week after to share the results. So subscribe, do those things.
Very fun.
Well, normally I do shorts about whatever Looney Tunes cartoons that Warner Brothers Classics have been airing every Saturday morning. And I need to get back into doing my series of Avatar: The Last Airbender reviews of their episodes. But my longtime subscribers will notice I haven't really done anything the last couple of weeks just because I've had other editing gigs that have taken up my time. But next Thursday, I will definitely have a review up for Wild Robot in anticipation for its release. I might either do Saturday night early or put it on my Patreon and buy me a coffee so that it'll come closer to the official release, because the official release is actually on SNL's 49th anniversary, just to commemorate the start of it all. So look forward to all of that.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been such a pleasure having you both on and sharing a little bit of the time you guys had at TIFF. So it's very cool. We have one question. Do you guys know what will the next TIFF Cinematheque be?
Like the next TIFF is an all year round type thing. It's an all year round organization. And so they do have what's called the Cinematheque that goes all year round, and those movies are free for members. I don't think they've released their schedule of what's going to be happening like later in the month and into October. I think the last time I checked their website, they didn't have anything filled in terms of the schedule, except for like, the Sound of Music sing along they have the couple of days before Christmas.
That's so cute.
Yeah, they have a couple of sing alongs this year. They seem kind of fun.
Yeah.
But no, I have no idea what they have planned for what's coming up, unfortunately.
Well, thank you so much, Shelby, for joining us and asking that question. Thank you guys again. And their channels are in the description. I can never say that part, by the way. It's like the description in the link. The link is in the description. Both of these gentlemen are in the description. You can check out their channels. Please subscribe. Hope you had a great time, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for having us.